Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the business connection, the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil. Now in podcast format. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American living in Brazil for many years and known as the King of Networking, and talking from my podcast studio in Campinas, São Paulo, Brazil. Today's guest is John Vuong, and he's talking with us from Toronto, Canada. And we're going to talk about podcasting and newspaper delivery. John Vuong is the founder of Local SEO Search Incorporated, a leading SEO Search Engine Optimization agency in Canada. John is also the founder of the Local SEO Today weekly podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, amongst many others. He's the fourth child of Vietnamese immigrants to Canada, and John is very familiar with hard work. He was born and raised in Hamilton, Canada, worked from a young age to help his family while also having some pocket money to have fun. And that's where we have a commonality in what we do. So, John, I see through that commonality. When Kayla, your assistant, reached out to me to offer you as a guest, I checked your bio and saw that you really started your career as a newspaper delivery. And that's the way I started in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania when I was 8. So tell our audience, what did you learn about business from delivering newspapers?
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Tom. At that age, at that time, I didn't know much and I didn't expect much, right? At that time, I was doing it to really help our family get ahead as immigrants moving from Vietnam, and we didn't have much growing up. So just to support the family by adding additional revenue or income to buy local groceries or getting our weekly milk or produce, it helped. And that's all I knew when I was at that age, right? But I was doing everything in terms of a business owner that I would do today, like solicit for new business, building good, solid relationships, continuing with that customer support, on-time delivery, reliability, all these things that are foundational in terms of how to run a successful business. It basically started in grassroots, right? Which was when I was at a young age delivering newspapers.
Well, literally grassroots, because you're out there on the lawn delivering a newspaper. And I guess it was in Canada. There it rains, it snows, it's windy.
Exactly, 4 seasons.
Yeah, and you learned as in Pittsburgh, the same thing. You learned that one of the challenges of delivering newspapers was making sure that the paper was dry when the reader got it. And so that was either placing it in the door or placing it somewhere where it wouldn't get wet, where it wouldn't get blown away. So and that was the continuity of business, right? It's customer satisfaction. Everybody had a different place they wanted their newspaper, which seemed strange, but, some people wanted it here. They wanted it behind a vase. They wanted it in their mailbox. And you had to remember all that. But I think that's the point, is the more success I think we both had, the more customers you got.
Exactly. And I think the big thing was, there were so many different challenges that I just had to soak it in and deal with it, right? And pivot. Like, say the batch of newspapers that usually appear at that specific time wouldn't appear for an hour or 2 hours because of delays, right? Well, what do? You call the newspaper company, what's going on? Oh, they're going to figure it out, come back in a couple hours. Then you go back. It's like, that's what life is all about, right? Or business. Things don't really happen according to plan. You just have to figure it out and deal with it. And sometimes there's thrown curveballs, right? So I was doing it for a couple of years and just learning about the ropes of how to run a business on a very small level, built that foundation on, continuing with my career.
Yeah, when I started with my newspapers, that was back in something like 1950, 52, which was long, long ago. But at that time, and in the States, most people, their link to communication was either the radio, because even, television was new at that time. So people were very attached to their newspaper. That was their connection to news, to what's happening, local events, whatever. So and it was a challenge, like you just said. On a snowy day, the truck would be late bringing the newspapers. And everybody wanted to see the news. They wanted to read the news. So, but it reminds me of starting a company, right? So when you do start, you only think about the good side many times. And there are more challenges to having a company. But tell us, how did you start? Why did you get into SEO?
Okay, so
it's a drive. It's still communication. I guess it's still clients and customer satisfaction, right?
Yes, exactly. So I started this agency back in 2013, so a little over 7 years ago. But prior to starting, I actually worked, after going to university, I studied business finance, but I didn't enjoy working in the office. So I actually took my first job in sales, advertising sales in traditional media, right? Primarily print and some digital. Mm-hmm. And my longest stint was working at the Yellow Pages, which is a printed directory, for 5 years. And
I remember that. So.
And maybe a lot of your listeners might not even understand what that really is, right? Right. But what it was a directory, a phone book, going to every single business, home, office, apartment, once a year with a complete listing of every single business in the locale or community or city, right? Where people can find things at their fingertips, but they understand it's the most comprehensive business directory out there for the location, right? So I was there for 5 years, but at that time when I was there, things were transitioning to more digital presence, right? Where Google was kind of taking off. The internet was speeding up. Smartphones were just in the infancy, right? And people were now looking and consuming content and information real time versus delayed, right? And why I started this company was at that time, I was dealing with thousands of local business owners where they invested year after year in the Yellow Pages ads, right? And they were not getting the same kind of returns that they once did. And you have to think about, say, 10, 20, 30 years ago, the internet wasn't even around, right? Technology doesn't even exist until the last, say, 20 years, right? So people consume, businesses and information traditionally, newspapers, flyers, trade shows, radio, television, directories, right? And now with technology kind of replacing what used to work, now people can go on their smartphones or desktop or tablet or, laptop right away because internet's fast and affordable. Smartphones are so powerful, right? With information. You can just Google things. You can talk to people on Google Home, Alexa, and you'll get information right away. So that's where media has kind of shifted to more real time. Same with social media like Twitter or Facebook. You're always looking for instant information, instant news, as opposed to delayed 1 day, 2 days old or weekly old information. Now you can find things with 24-hour newscasts, right? And people are really about getting information right away. And that's why search has become so powerful because they know users, customers understand that you can find things whenever you want, anytime, quickly, with reliable content and information that's catered towards you as the user, right?
Well, I agree. Search has always been powerful. And when you go back and what you mentioned, even here in Brazil, the types of directories like the Yellow Pages. We had Yellow Pages here, the same situation. Internet here around 2000 was when it started, and then the transition, as you mentioned, technology here was a little bit slower than there in North America and in Asia. But today there are more smartphones than there are people here. So, and almost everybody, I'm saying the vast majority, that almost is like 70% of people access internet today through a smartphone, even more so than a laptop or a desktop. And that's where they get their information. Wi-Fi's, public Wi-Fi's or free access Wi-Fi's have become relevant in most of Brazil. And most of the younger people, that's how they live. It's in their smartphone, riding their bus, going to work. And what we've all come to see, and I think that's what's happening there. The searching is two sides. It's you searching for something and everybody searching for you. So the companies want to be on. You said the news. Every time I open up my smartphone, there's push news coming towards me. I don't even have to ask anymore. And so I think that has changed. But the mechanisms behind the search, I'm going to say they're still the same. They still exist, right?
Exactly. And it's similar in terms of foundational. And I always look at like businesses in general, generational businesses. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen overnight to be a success, right? Yes, there might be a couple golden childs, right? Like the Facebooks in the world, the Twitters in the world. But if you think about a small, medium-sized business, if you've ever had your parents or grandparents run a business before, how long did it take them to refine their product service offering, understand what works and what doesn't, pivot many times, make tons of mistakes, and then figure out how to make it streamlined and profitable, right? Not every day will you become super profitable. Some months, years, you will be running in the red, right? And that's what businesses have to endure and go through to really experience hardship and overcome obstacles like what we're living today, right? So what you have to understand is generationally, technology didn't exist. So how did they survive? Traditionally, it was building good businesses foundationally, taking care of your clients, building solid relationships, and relying on word-of-mouth referrals.
And I agree. It was still face-to-face. And I think the word that you use very well, local, the world is the world, but we are still local. We want to look into this. We want to see somebody. And it's the local store. It's the mom and pop store that you go into. You want to be recognized personally. I don't want to be recognized by some time of camera, but when somebody does say, hello, Tom, or hello, John, and knows you, and that's the locals. Where I live in a big city, but where I actually live, our neighborhood, you can, and that's it. You can create that local feeling. And I think that's important in any type of search or mechanism or any business.
And it's a sense of community, right? It's a sense of belonging. And you have to remember business owners, all they want to do is serve their customers with whatever product and service because there's a need, right? And they're fulfilling that gap. So if you feel you have a great product and service, you have to make sure that there is some sort of demand. And then you have to understand how to run a real business successfully. That means, yes, there's going to be challenges, and not everyone's going to be successful, right? It might not even be in you. But if you endure the times and you put in the hard work and you're passionate and you have motivation to succeed, yes, you can be ultra successful, right? And success means different things for different people as well. So, just enduring that and speaking to thousands of business owners, and they basically letting me know, like, they're pivoting. They need someone they can trust that's honest, transparent. And I kind of filled that gap, not knowing anything about SEO, right? I just knew there was a need and demand. I just wanted to fill that gap. So then over the last couple of years, I've been really refining my art to really enhance my understanding and knowledge base on SEO and what it really means and how Google works and what I need to do to ensure my clients are not only fitting my core values, like they're in alignment with me as a person, but I also want to help them on a more personal level because I actually care, right? So that relationship bonding is so pivotal.
Well, you mentioned another thing, the sharing and Google, I guess, from when you first started learning about it, Google's changed. I don't want to say it changes every day, but it changes frequently. And once you think you know something about it, it seems that they feel that you know something about it and change. So part of that is what you do. You need to follow that and help your clients adjust to that, don't you?
Yeah, so Google's always changing their algorithm, but for the betterment of the user, I believe, right? Where their primary focus is to display information that's, the most credible sources of websites based on your history and what you're looking or thinking of looking for using their AI, a rank brain algorithm, right? What you need to ensure as a business owner is not only do you need to build a good website with good content and ensure that you position yourself as that leader or expert or authoritative figure, but you need to stay on top of what is going on in the digital landscape as well, right? So think about traditional. I always look at before technology existed, what happens when a competitor starts opening up in your local town? You understand what they're all about. What are their unique selling propositions? Are they undercutting you with price? Are they providing better service? It's very similar in terms of the digital landscape. So if you feel like there's competitors in the space, how do you differentiate? What sets you apart, right? And that's what you need to really focus on. And what I always let my customers know is understand what makes you different. You're different in terms of the story, the journey. Yes, that bio is different. But the product and service, what is your uniqueness of it? What's your differentiator? And if that's what you understand and who you want to target is those people, like that persona, characteristic, demographic, that grouping, that's what you cater your entire website, your whole digital platform and messaging to target those type of people. So it's much more than SEO. It's much more than just a digital presence. It's about your whole business.
Right.
And that's what we try to provide, more of a holistic, encompassing the entire awareness of your business campaign.
But I see too, and I think that I understand you because I understand what you're saying. But many times business owners, their focus is on their product or their service. And they tend not to value this side and this aspect, what you just mentioned. And the tweaking of updating their services and the way they're found happens and needs to happen more often than tweaking their product or their service. And many times they're not aware of that. They say, well, it's been working this way for whatever. And they find their comfort zone and keep that. But one of the things I mentioned, I speak a lot on networking, and one of the points I bring up is what you just said. You need to network and understand your competition. And people are surprised, well, why would I want to do that? That's where your challenges are going to come from. If you don't open that eye, and that's either physically walking into somebody else's store or navigating through their website, you can wake up and be surprised.
Yeah, pivoting is so important and vital. Competitive analysis, understanding where your gaps are, understanding who your clients are and what makes you different, but what are you seeing in the industry, in the space, right? Because there's always something new. There's always differences going on, right? And challenges. And yes, there's going to be new competitors popping up. And how do they get into the market in the first place, right? So there's gaps somewhere, and they're capitalizing on it, right? There's a need somewhere, and therefore that's why you need to stay on top. And yes, people become complacent. If it's been working for many, many years, people just stick with their ways to see, well, it's been working, why change it, right? I always say, yes, if it's working, continue doing it, but be aware. Understand what's really going on and be ready to pivot, right? Or maybe you can
make it
try
better,
different things. Yeah, refine it and figure out what's going on. And that's why staying in terms of your industry, being a part of associations and on top of your profession, right? And be a thought leader. That's what it ultimately is, because you want to be the best of what you can to serve your clients the best way you can, right? So staying on top of what's going on in your industry and your domain will keep you going, right? Staying on top, educating yourself and understanding what's going on.
Well, you went from Yellow Pages to podcasting.
Yes.
Was that a pivot? Was that a jump? Was that sort of a walk in the park? How did that all happen?
Yeah, so the reason I got into podcasting, and this journey of podcasting started about 2 years ago. So I've been running my business for 5 years, and I thought of it as another medium in which I can expand my reach and help others. Because as you know, podcasting doesn't really pay the bills. Right? It's really for a passion. It's really to help and give to other people with content and information. And people are consuming information readily, freely at their fingertips. And it's another way to broadcast a message in terms of audio format, right? So it's just another platform to reach more people, potential prospects, but also to give entrepreneurs some experience and feedback and help them, guide them through the trenches. Right?
No, well, for me, it's a learning experience. It has been. And I think what you mentioned of local and community, I actually started, Talk to Brazil started as an internet radio program in 2009. So that was a fixed time, fixed location, internet, and it helped me create a community, of an international community of persons, a very niche focus of business in Brazil. It was the first English language program about business in Brazil. So then I learned the same thing, listening to other people, listening to thought leaders of niche marketing at that time. So you just carve out your niche and take it over. And that's what I did. And then as the technology for podcasting became more prevalent, is when I pivoted again to podcasting. And podcasting does open more opportunities to do the same as we are. We would probably have never met. All right, the probability of John and Tom talking together is pretty close to zero, right? But we're here, we're sharing. You're helping me understand. You're helping our listeners understand. The technology's here. The technology wasn't here before. But it's also part of what you just said. We need to update ourselves. We need to be part of different communities. It's not just one association or one thing. Because there's just so much happening. And SEO, I agree that it's, some people say, well, it's the same everywhere. I'm not sure it really is. Food isn't the same. People aren't the same. The spices you need to put in food are different to make them attractive or palatable for different people. So I'm sure, is that a portion of your business of how do you spice up your SEO?
Yeah, so there's no template. There's no one way fits all, right? There's no drug, pharmaceutical miracle drug, right? It's all about like understanding that personalized business, their main competitors, their uniqueness, and then putting together all the different pieces to put together a campaign, right? So it's very similar to health and wellness. It's, relationships. It takes a lot of time and hard work, right? And it's not going to happen overnight. So it's a long-term game, but what you need to understand is it's foundational and it's to really help you scale and give you a different platform and presence from other sources. So there's different content sources, right? Of course, there's a website where people are searching by keywords. But then there's also video content. People can go to YouTube and consume videos, right? People can listen on Spotify and Player FM, TuneIn, or, Apple Play. There's so many different places people can listen to podcasts and radio stations. Then they can do image searches as well on Google, Instagram, Pinterest. And then there's the social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Google. There's so many different places people are consuming information today, right? And it's very overwhelming if I take a look at it, because traditionally there were only like 5 major channels, right? Like
That's true.
Print, radio, television, trade shows, right? Those are only traditional. But then today with technology, all those have been replaced with newer forms of media that is barriers to entry has been really low that anyone can get into podcasting or creating videos or images, right? Because technology is so advanced. Those pictures that you take and videos you take on your smartphone is as good as $1,000 cameras that was sold 2-3 years ago.
That's true.
Right?
That's
so
true.
The quality, technology has advanced. Internet speed is so quick that anyone can broadcast live feeds right off your desktop and laptop and make it as real as a professional radio station type of broadcast.
That's true.
So barrier to entry has so much diminished that anyone can do it. But now it's how do you refine it so that you can do it the best you can and so that others can, want to do it and pay for your product or service, right? So that's where monetization and becoming a business is different, right? But it's all about like how do you effectively get that information of product, service, your journey, your story in front of more people and more eyeballs because people are consuming and searching for your product and service. That's what
we're looking at a world with 8 billion people.
Yes.
And so and each one is different. There are no two people the same. When you talk about companies, it's hard to say, well, all companies are the same, all small companies are the same. They're not. But what's your challenge? When you said SEO is it takes time.
Yes.
What we see here in Brazil and in other parts of the world, you see the small startup, the entrepreneur. Here, the 70 to 80% of companies don't make it through the first year.
Yep.
So when you're on one side saying, well, SEO takes time,
yes.
and the other side, the person not even sure if it has any time, how do you meet those together?
Yeah, definitely. So I always get this question, and one thing I always advise when someone's ready to take on their SEO journey, right, is ensure that you have a real business and you know what it takes to survive, right? So you actually should have revenue. You should know who your clients are. You should know what makes you different and who your major competitors are. So I always take on clients that have been running a business for multiple years with decent revenue, but doesn't really have a stronghold of digital presence. And what that means is, they understand that it takes time versus it's survival mode, right? Where, because not everyone will be successful in business. So if you don't know where your clients are, or who they are, or where they're consuming information or content or whatnot, like go play around with ads. Go put ads on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Google ads, right? See where they are. Then refine your messaging, refine your website to understand who you want to target and attract.
Yeah, but today playing that game is expensive. It gets more expensive. So, just playing around with words wherever they are can be an expensive journey. And sometimes it's hard to evaluate what you're getting back from that money.
So expense, it's all relative. If you're in business, you understand what it takes, right?
You should. I think the word there is you should, right?
Because people think there's so many sites that are all about side hustle, hacking, this quick speed, right? But in reality, think about generationally, right? How did your grandparents survive? It was passed on through generations, right?
True.
Farms, businesses, and only the ones that actually had that income or revenue or asset can start a business. Today with technology, it's the barriers to entry is so low, but their expectation is so high, right? So you always have to think, how much does it cost to hire a salesperson? How much does it cost to put a booth in a trade show? Traditional media costs a lot of money to put on radio, in the yellow pages, newspapers, like trade shows. All these used to cost $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. But today with ads, it's 10, 20 cents.
That's
or
true.
$5, $10. And if you can't afford that, you shouldn't even be in business, right?
That's
so it's
true.
all
No, I agree
relative.
With you. I agree
because
with you.
if you want to grow a business to be successful, to really take care of your family, your friends, or whatever it is, right? To have a better life for the next generation. So you have to give up something. right? And right now, technology is already speeding up time. Right? So you need to now fork up the money, just like buying a piece of home, like if you own an asset like a home, right? Versus renting, you understand it takes years to save up for a down payment.
That's true.
So if you look at running a business, it should take years to become more of a break even or start generating more cash flow and profitability to a point where then you understand how to run a business. So all these things, people are trying to speed up and quickly assess when it shouldn't be like that, right? It should take time. It should be
and
more
you need
foundational.
energy to do that. And, no pain, no gain. And I think and no free lunch. So you really do. And many times I think we've been enticed to that, to things that are easy. And technology is easy and free, and it's not. It's accessible, but it's not free. But you do have to have the understanding. And I think the important thing is what you do. You also need persons who know what they're doing. Because it's not, you can't be an amateur in understanding and learning and develop your own SEO. You can have an overview of what it is, but to apply it as you do, you do need an expert. So I think I can see that's where you've come from. So a long journey, and I think it's not over, from newspapers to yellow pages to podcasting. So, but anyway, I hear you saying SEO is here to stay.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely a platform, a medium, right? And people are still searching. The reason SEO is so, accessible and transparent and people use it on a daily basis is they're in control. You're not going on Facebook looking for business owners. Right?
No, but people have always searched. I think that's the secret. Ever. From when they came out of the cave, they were searching. And how they did that. So searching, we're going to be searching forever, and we're always searching for answers. So,
and how do they consume it, right? So it used to be referrals, word of mouth, and then it came newspapers or directories. But then it's always looking for stuff, encyclopedias searching, right? Videos searching, how-to guides, like all these are reading books, right? You're searching for more information and knowledge. So you're always searching. But then when you're looking at a business transaction, you want to do your due diligence. So having a website that connects with you. And then it also means you need to run a good business, which is referrals and case studies and testimonials. Like all these things matter. And if you run a good business, it should all cycle back to having that impression on your website to translate what you actually know.
And here we are, we're the result of a search.
Exactly.
Talking here from Campinas, Brazil to Toronto, Canada, right? With an expat from Pittsburgh and a gentleman who from Vietnamese descendants. So I think that's the fantastic melting pot of what this world's all about. So, John, we're coming to the end of our time. I want to thank you so much for sharing, and we'd invite our listeners to find more about you on LinkedIn. Anything you'd like to say for closing?
Yeah, I always think of like entrepreneurial journey or your personal journey, right? Foundationally it's not a race. You need to slow things down. Even today, during this pandemic, you understand what's most important in your life. Family, relationships, right? And taking care of your health, right?
That's true.
Those food and shelter are probably the primary things that you should take care of. Everything outside of that, even your business or, work, then you can assess and self-reflect on who you're, spending the most time with, and are they in alignment with your values, right? So figure that out. And life is a long journey. It's not a really quick way to figure things out, right? And you've lived life a long, long time. I deal with hundreds of business owners, and I'm fortunate enough to have dealt with thousands of business owners over the course of my years, right? And I love just learning from them, asking the right questions, and really dissecting how they became what they've become, right? Which is great community leaders, great fathers, great mothers, great business owners, advocates, right? Inspirational people. So life is a lot longer, and don't think about quick ways to make it.
And the word that you just mentioned, we need to learn every day and take this time that we have the time and take time to learn and also teach.
Exactly.
What we've done. So, John, thanks again for being here, all right?
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. I had a lot of fun.
And for our listeners, they can find, besides John Vuong, and his last name is Vuong, you find him on LinkedIn, also his site, which is Local SEO Today. And that's .ca from Canada, so localseotoday.ca. And his podcast, which is called Local SEO Today on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I'd like to thank our audience and our sponsor, Focus MI Market Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. And more about them on their site, which is focusmi.com. Our website, talktobrazil.com, you can find our previous shows of Talk to Brazil, which are also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and many more. So remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.